I just went and watched A New Hope after finishing Andor Season 2 and then rewatching Rogue One, and it is absolutely wild the amount of new context this film has. Not only are all the scenes with the Imperials and Darth Vader given new meaning and new weight, but the entire plotline of the film involving Darth Vader and the Empire going after the Death Star plans, which are stashed in R2, is now so much more tense, because basically they take the plans right back to the Empire. Farm boy Luke and the old wizard man go to the Death Star with R2, who has the plans, and come this close to not making it out of there. Oh my. Which would have jeopardized everything that Andor built up to, everything every character in Andor worked for, and then also the entire Rogue One mission. Hey everyone, it's Andrew. Today I'm going to go over everything I noticed that feels different and has new meaning in A New Hope after watching Andor and Rogue One. And the first thing I want to point out is the timeline of all of these events. Andor Season 2 finishes merely hours before the beginning of Rogue One. Rogue One goes for about a week, ends with the Death Star plans being taken away by Princess Leia on the Tantive 4, and A New Hope begins with Darth Vader boarding the Tantive 4 looking for the plans. Again, mere hours or even minutes later. And it's crazy seeing the connected thread of events here in the context of everything Cassian suffered for with his rebel friends throughout Andor and then in Rogue One. First of all, I just want to say how much respect I have for both Captain Antilles and Princess Leia for straight up lying to Darth Vader and the Empire. Darth Vader saying, "What happened to the transmissions? What happened to the Death Star plans you intercepted?" And they're all like, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about." Basically gaslighting him, lying to his face, continuing the efforts of everyone who suffered throughout Andor and Rogue One. And it's interesting hearing mentions of the Imperial Senate. And I feel like this ties directly to the Gorman massacre and Mon Mothma's speech, saying that the Empire are basically manipulating the narrative, lying to you. And then we get lines like this.
Holding her is dangerous. Word of this gets out, it could generate sympathy for the rebellion in the Senate.
Because it's here that Vader also tweaks the public narrative. He gives the order to
send a distress signal and then inform the Senate that all aboard were killed.
Also kind of crazy that Vader just moments earlier, essentially, or a few hours earlier, slaughtered all of the rebels in the hallway scene. And knowing now how the rebels found out about the Death Star plans, or even about the existence of the Empire's superweapon, with Lonnie leaking this information to Luthen, which initially came from the ISB, Luthen killing Lonnie, passing on the information to Kleya, Luthen dying, Kleya then giving this information to Cassian, Cassian then trying to tell the rebels about this on Yavin, and most of them seemingly not believing him, which parallels the same thing that happens with Jyn in Rogue One. The rebels don't really believe her, which is why they have to sneak off and do their own little Rogue One mission without the assistance of most of the Rebel Alliance. And that conversation ties directly into this discussion aboard the Death Star among the Imperials. The Empire are now seeing what the Rebellion are capable of, seeing that the Rebellion has become more of an organized effort. And this all ties back to what Dane Gear, this Imperial, said to Darth Vader. If word of this gets out, it could generate sympathy for the Rebellion in the Senate. This is everything Luthen ever worked for, saying that the Rebellion needed an event like Gorman. They needed to see something on that scale to unify Rebellion cells across the galaxy and come together in an effort in an alliance to take down the Empire. Interesting seeing the threads of that though, that they're aware of that in A New Hope, that is what's being referenced here. And then during the Imperial meeting, we also get the line,
"The rebellion will continue to gain a support in the Imperial Senate."
The Imperial Senate will no longer be of any concern to us. I have just received word that the Emperor has dissolved the Council permanently. The last remnants of the old Republic have been swept away.
And this is even crazier. Basically, Emperor Palpatine has decided to dissolve the Senate, likely because of the chain of events that occurred following Mon Mothma's speech. The Empire don't want any more discussion and debate. They want to control the narrative of the galaxy, which is part of why they just got rid of the Senate, essentially.
I am the Senate.
But man, it's all connected. And the Imperials are even asking how the Emperor will maintain control.
Regional governors now have direct control over their territories. Fear will keep the local systems in line.
That line there, fear will keep the local systems in line. This is everything Luthen talked about. This is everything he was working towards. This is even what Partagaz, I think, is seeing in his final moments, what he is realizing, that the Empire are indeed doomed. The tighter their grip on the galaxy, the more rebellion they will fuel. And then they go on to debate the Death Star and its vulnerability. Now that the rebels have the plans, some of them are worried the rebels will be able to use the plans to find a weakness, whereas other Imperials are overconfident.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
It's also around this time that Princess Leia is being tortured for information about the location of the rebel base, which is also even more wild considering everything and the hardships we've seen throughout Andor and the torture that goes on in that show of the characters. But Tarkin suggests Leia might be more responsive to an alternative form of persuasion, which is, now that the Death Star is fully operational, using it to destroy Alderaan. And this is basically the rebellion's worst fear come true. This is the fear we see in Andor, in Luthen, in the desperation to get this message to the Rebel Alliance, in the frustration the characters feel in that all the rebels don't believe the Empire have built this thing. And even though by this point the Death Star has used its destructive power to destroy the city of Jeddah and also the Imperial base on Scarif, it was yet to be used to destroy an entire planet. And this was the Empire's grand plan to gain ultimate control over the galaxy by instilling fear in everyone through the destructive power of the Death Star. And this line from Princess Leia, I think, echoes the words of Luthen.
The more you tighten your grip, Tarkin, the more star systems will slip through your fingers.
And this is how rebellion spread. The destruction of Alderaan is basically the Gorman massacre all over again, but on a much grander scale. But at this point, the rebellion was already strong. The rebellion had already been getting ready for events like this for years now. And in a way, you could argue that this is the turning point for the Empire. This is where they basically felt they were invincible, and in that respect became even more vulnerable. Sure, there was still work to be done, but I'm sure, as Luthen had predicted, this event in particular spawned even more rebellion in the galaxy. But like I said at the start of the video, the thing that's scary about all of this is that the rebels, Luke, Obi-Wan, Han, Chewie, bring the Death Star plans basically back into the hands of the Empire. They come this close to being captured, with the plans still being stashed in R2. Imagine R2 had been captured somewhere here, or even just got left behind on the Death Star. Then everything Cassian and all of the other rebels from Andor, and all the characters from Rogue One had ever worked for would basically fall apart. It would have all been for nothing. But thankfully, they do escape. They make it to the base on Yavin 4. R2-D2 gets plugged in. They extract the plans. They create their plan for attacking the Death Star. And then Luke goes and blows it up. And the rest is history. They came this close to failure. Just saying. The other thing that I think is awesome about all of this is the connection of Yavin 4. Cassian and Bix walked these hallways, spent time in the Yavin 4 base. And then only a bit of time later, Luke, Leia, Han, and everyone else are there. The connection is just mind-blowing to me. They're all part of this connected world. Mon Mothma was here. The lead-up of events to all of this is just now so much more powerful because of the sacrifice we've seen, because of the events of Andor, because of Rogue One. The Empire seemed more powerful, more frightening, and yet also more flawed. The tension of them trying to destroy Yavin is even more powerful now, knowing the events that led up to this, knowing that the Death Star basically came within moments of annihilating the planet, or the moon. The fact it all rested on the shoulders of Luke in the end, and of his trust in the Force. And I feel like this also ties into the Force healer we see on Yavin in Andor Season 2. She knows Cassian is made for a bigger, larger purpose. She sees that the Force moves with him. And this is the same Force that I guess in a way gets passed on to Luke. They're carrying this thread on to basically defeat the Empire. It was as if she knew Cassian's place in all of this, which then would also be taken on by Jyn and Cassian in Rogue One, especially with the connection to the Kyber Crystal, Jyn's trust in the Force through her mother and father, and then also with Luke. It's so clever. And I just have to say, I said this in my last video as well, a lot of the time I feel like making a prequel or attempting to do something like Andor can diminish the original work, and I'm so glad that that's not the case here. I'm so glad that Andor and Rogue One are so good, that they're so well written, that they're so thoughtful, and that they don't diminish A New Hope in any way, but rather elevate it instead. I feel like A New Hope is an even better movie now knowing the context of events that occur before this, and that is a high bar to pass because, my goodness, it's a great film. It's a generational defining film. A New Hope is the original Star Wars. It's what started all of this. None of this would be here if it weren't for this film. And to have something elevate that even further through more context, through thoughtful storytelling, through character development and emotional connection with these characters in Andor, in Rogue One, and now in A New New Hope again. That is something that is so special, and I'm not sure we're ever going to see this in Star Wars again. I really hope we do, but man, what a journey this has been. Seeing it all tied together now, watching the events of each of these things all as one thread, incredible, and I don't think the Andor show creators could have done a better job. Now, if you want to see a breakdown of how Andor impacts Rogue One, then watch this video here, and also come follow me on Instagram, Twitter, join my Discord and TikTok for more, and thanks for watching this. Always remember,
Stay bombastic.